Hey, beautiful soul. Welcome to Spirit Speakeasy. I'm Joy Giovanni, Joyful Medium. I'm a working psychic medium, energy healer, and spiritual gifts mentor. This podcast is like a seat at the table in a secret club, but with mediums, mystics, and the spiritual luminaries of our time. So come behind the velvet ropes with me and see inside my world as I chat insider style with profoundly gifted souls. We go deep, share juicy stories, laugh a lot, and it wouldn't be a speakeasy without great insider secrets and tips. You might even learn that you have some gifts of your own. So step inside the Spirit Speakeasy. Hey, beautiful souls. We are so blessed to have today's guest. Her name is Geena Aguilar. Around San Diego and Southern California, she is known by Geena the Latina. She is a local celebrity and personality, and quite honestly, I think she's a treasure here. She does so much work just giving back to the community, and she has a nonprofit, and she has her own podcast where she talks about wellness and lots of woo-woo things. I actually got to be a guest on her podcast, but she has this incredible journey. She had a really significant loss earlier in her life, and she just shares with us not only how that loss, which she shares really beautifully about both of her brothers and what happens with them, it helps to propel her into this version of herself that she is today. But she also gives us these beautiful pearls of wisdom about how she found the courage to really get out of the place that she grew up in and make a better life for herself, how she was able to follow her intuition and get out of her own way to have this amazing career as a public personality, and all of the accolades that she's gotten, and how she uses her intuition today. She has some spiritual gifts of her own that she has recently publicly started sharing about. So she's just a wonderful human being all around. I'm so grateful that I got to meet her and have gotten to talk with her a few times, and that she agreed to come and share about her journey and her advice for us here on Spirit Speakeasy. So without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce you to Geena Aguilar. Welcome back, or welcome in for another episode of Spirit Speakeasy. We are here today with Geena Aguilar, also known as Geena the Latina. She is a local treasure here in Southern California. I'm going to read her bio, and then we are going to get to talk to her, which is so exciting. Geena the Latina has been a staple on San Diego's #1 hit music station, Channel 933, for more than 17 years. Geena is the host of the Geena the Latina and Frankie V Morning Show, and she's arguably one of the most beloved radio personalities in San Diego. The city of San Diego named April 17th, 2018 as Geena the Latina Day. In 2018, Geena was also recognized by California Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher's 80th District as Woman of the Year. She was voted Best Radio Personality in 2019 in San Diego, just to name a few of her accolades. And Geena also appears weekly on Fox 5 San Diego, giving viewers a look at what's happening around town every weekend. In 2023, Geena launched her own show called the Geena the Latina Show. It's a dynamic online show and podcast that really delves into the realms of mental, spiritual, and physical health with a creative touch. The show aims to inspire, entertain, educate, and motivate listeners, fostering a vibrant community that celebrates diversity and empowers individuals to prioritize their well-being and unlock their future potential, a lot like we do here. Geena currently serves on the board of the Positive Movement Foundation, which aims to provide underserved and at-risk children and youth with the tools and support to increase their likelihood for success as they mature. In 3 years, the foundation has raised more than $900,000, implemented dozens of programs in multiple schools across San Diego County, and has provided endless amounts of resources, both for students and teachers alike. The city of San Diego named December 2nd, 2023 as the Positive Movement Foundation Day. In 2017, Geena created an annual Girls Empowerment Conference, which was attended by 500 high school students from underserved communities throughout San Diego. And it quickly became the largest non-religious conference of its kind in the whole United States. Geena has been through more in her young life than most people could imagine. She had 2 teenage brothers that were actually killed due to gang violence. So she has a strong personal passion for the inner city youth of her community and aims to serve in any way possible. She doesn't like to toot her horn, but this is really true about her. Geena was the first in her family to graduate from a 4-year university and was the founding president of the first ever Latina-based sorority, Sigma Lambda Gamma, at Loyola Marymount University, where she also received a softball scholarship. She's been a member and has supported numerous charities throughout San Diego. She truly loves life and appreciates everything that she has been blessed with. Welcome in, Geena. How are you?
Wow, that was a great intro.
There's so much that you do, and you are truly a local Southern California treasure. And I have a feeling soon to be a national treasure, honestly.
I thank you. Coming from you, that's great.
Well, you're pretty amazing. I know you don't like to toot your own horn too much, but you actually are a California native. You grew up in LA in the Valley. Is that where you're from?
I grew up in Silmar, San Fernando, which is in the Los Angeles area, North Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But I moved to San Diego like 18 years ago.
That's a while. I mean, it seems like, so you're in LA, you have kind of like a semi-normal childhood. Is that how it is there for you?
It just depends what you define as normal. Well, we grew up in an area. I grew up in the Silmar, San Fernando area, and anyone who's from there, I always say like, we grew up like, I don't know how to explain it. So like people like, oh, were you poor? I don't consider myself poor. We definitely didn't grow up rich, but we grew up in an area where there was like a lot of gang activity was like highly, present. And a lot of girls, got pregnant at a very young age, and it was just kind of a normal thing. And not many people like went to college and did things. So you just kind of learn how to maneuver that. When you're young, like which streets to walk down and which streets not to walk down. And it just kind of becomes life. It was very normal in my mind, but until I got older is when I realized like, maybe that wasn't so quote unquote normal. With that said, without getting too much into my family, cause that's their lives, but there was a lot of alcohol, drug addiction, like they did the best they could, but I wouldn't say it was like what you see on TV, the cookie cutter house, the leave it to leave it to cleavers or whatever they're called. Yeah, it definitely wasn't that. Yeah.
So how did you, as a young girl, like a young girl and a young woman, how did you see a different life for yourself? What was inspiring to you?
So for me, a therapist once told me that, a long time ago, and it made sense to me. Like when people can't control what's going on in their home environment or the things around them, like kids, they start controlling what they can. So for me, I became an overachiever in life. Like, so I was a straight A student, valedictorian, best athlete, like was very like hypercritical of myself though too. Cause you start like, at your, the way you look and like you start perfecting everything you can control when you're a kid, when you can't control the other things. So I think that's kind of where I started exceeding. And then me and my brothers always grew up like, I know this is crazy, but I don't know what to talk about this right now. I haven't talked in a while, but like Biggie Smalls, like we always wanted like all his songs he rapped through, like, we made it out the hood. We're here. We're going to go on and do bigger things. It was just always this like, I was really good at manifesting at a very young age before I even understood what manifesting was. Like, I think that anyone who comes from certain areas, it's easy to dream because it's not a reality, I guess. And no one ever told me no. So in my head and me and my brother's head, we were like, oh, we're going to make it. And I don't even know what make it meant at that moment. But like, we were like, since a little kid, like, we're going to do it. We're going to become rich. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And it was just always in our head, like, we're going to do more. And I don't know exactly what was the inspiration of that other than just dreaming. Yeah. Really? Like, and manifesting, I guess, which I didn't know that manifest was a word though at that age.
I think it's so powerful though, just even that emotion of music moves you, and looking at the compare and contrast of just everyday life moves you. I know that's how it was for me when I was young, where it's like, yeah, we didn't know what was more, what did it mean to like be in a something better. We just knew like, well, maybe this isn't it. So
Yeah. And then when you hear like your favorite rappers rapping about it, you're like, yeah, that's it. I want to do it, or I want,
yeah,
and maybe that wasn't like the greatest inspiration, but it sure did get you out of the mindset of like, I always just knew I wanted to do something bigger than what was expected, which wasn't much expectation at that time.
yeah. It sounds
Yeah.
like you are someone that just has an inner determination and an inner drive too. I know you talk about this publicly occasionally,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that you've already shared with people that I've done a reading for you, which I told you I'm so happy happened before we had this conversation, because I
Yeah.
wanted to get a chance to meet your loved ones independently of us talking and then work with you. How old are you when you lose your brothers?
So I was a year out of college. So I think I was like 21 or 22. I went to school at Loyola Marymount, graduated, and was working at Fox Sports TV as a sales assistant. So my life, and I always say like my life was very different. Like I was always worked in the entertainment industry, but I kind of kept my home life secret or where I come from, because I was like embarrassed at the time. Like I thought, oh, they're going to think I'm ghetto or they're, whatever. But,
Yeah.
I was about 22 when my first brother died. He was shot and killed. And then 5 months later, my other brother was shot and killed to the day,
It's
five
so
months to the
hard.
day. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That must have been, how did you process that as such a young woman in such a pivotal time in your life?
Yeah. Well, after my first brother died, I was kind of like, just keep it moving, like keep it. But then after my second brother died, it was just a lot. He was like my best friend. And I ended up just quitting my job. I don't even remember quitting. I think I just stopped showing up. I have no clue. Like when you go through that much trauma, you're just out of it. And I
Yeah.
moved back in with my parents because at the time I was moving on like after 18, I never moved back home. But I moved back in with my parents and I literally did nothing for an entire year. And I was super
Wow.
depressed. I got really skinny. All I would do is like, I had an eating disorder. Like that's when an eating disorder developed. And I would just, run every day, like 5, 6 miles and then sleep. I slept a lot,
Yeah.
for about an entire year.
Well, we should mention that right before this, like you said, you're at Loyola Marymount. You worked your determined self to the bone, I'm sure, achieving this softball scholarship, which
Yeah.
anyone who's ever been in any kind of school, or now it's different, but it's so hard to get those type of scholarships.
Yeah.
So you work so hard, you graduate, which like you said, you're the first person in your family. It's a really big deal. You're on this like success trajectory, and then just like happens to all of us, life happens, and
Yeah.
really it feels like it just takes you all the way
Down,
down.
down.
Yeah.
I always say like people grieve differently and, I never judge anyone for how they grieve.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're like, I was at my low and even for years to come, cause I didn't deal with it immediately. But for that year, I was really at my low. I remember one of my friends like came and visited me and was just like, yo, you need to like pull it together. Like something's not right
Yeah.
with you. But I ended up going back to work about a year later and I threw myself in work at the radio station. But yeah, during that time, I guess it was just, I mean, anyone who's suffered depression or like I understand, like you feel like there's never going to be, like, you're never going to be happy again. Like when
Right.
you lose someone, you think you see them, you have dreams. Like it's just something you don't even you never wish on your worst enemy at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
most people that are listeners and friends here have lost someone significant in their lives as part of their journey. One of the questions I always get asked that maybe you have some insight on looking back, was there something, we're in this grief journey, and like you said, everyone grieves differently when they've lost someone. And for most people, it seems like there's some point which they can't identify when it's happening, where that momentum just somehow comes back, or you pull yourself out of that quicksand of grief. Do you remember what happens for you? That is it an offer that comes? Is
Yeah.
it
So I was at my parents' home for like a year doing nothing. And my old boss, I always tell him this because he doesn't even remember doing this, but my old boss at the radio station, because I had worked at the radio station in LA at Kiss FM throughout college. And then when I graduated, I went to go get a real job because I never thought I was going to be on the radio. And he called me. I don't know how, because I wasn't even taking people's phone calls or anything, but he called my parents' house phone, and I remember he's like, get the F out of that house. Like, you need to come back and work. And his intention was just to get me out of the house, because I feel like and he's like, you can just work in the office. You can just literally come in whenever you want. You can go home. It's okay. No one knows your story. Cause at the time, remember, I was still embarrassed, like around Hollywood people. And I thought that they would think like, oh, who's this little girl from the ghetto? Like, two brothers killed. Her brother was in gangs. Like, all these things that I could care less about now. But at the time, it was a big deal. And, he's like, just come back and come to the office. And I did. I literally started the next day. And I threw myself into work. Like, I was at that radio station from the morning to the very night.
Yeah. Which obviously is probably not the healthiest version of that pendulum swing either, but it gets you kind of moving and going and
it got me out of the house. And then eventually, that's why I always tell people, like, at some point you're going to have to deal with your grief, because like, fast forward to however many years later, I got sick, and I was really like, I never dealt with all the trauma, because I just threw myself into work, which for me worked at the time. It got me out of the house. It kept me going. It got me to where I am today. But at some point, all that grief is going to catch up to you, and you have to do the work.
Such a good point. Grief is patient. If we busy ourselves with other things, it lays in wait until, like you said, something happens, and then we're forced to deal with it one way or another. So then you're on this kind of train again of determination. You find that version of you that's got that hustle spirit of like, I'm just going to go and get this done and move my life forward. Do you, at some point, like, are obviously you're thinking of your brothers all along, but are you receiving like dreams from them? Are you just putting all of that to the side as part of that like grief you're not dealing with?
So, at first they would show up in my dreams, and they still show up in my dream as little kids, which is interesting, little kids. Cause, at the time I didn't know what that meant. But I always use them as like ammunition, because they wanted to be on this dream with us. Cause in our head, we always wanted to work in the entertainment world. My brother would be like, oh, I'm going to be your security guard, which I don't know why I would need a security guard, but at the time it made sense. And my other brother was going to be like the fashion guy. And we just had this whole plan. So when I was working radio, I didn't really know what I was working to, but it was always for them. But a big moment happened a year after I was on the radio here in San Diego, and we skipped a whole lot of how I got here, but that's fine. Doesn't really matter. But a year after, I was going to quit radio, because I didn't want to be in the public eye. It was just, people were so mean and just have all these things to say. And I hadn't shared what happened to my brother with my brothers. And I ended up sharing that story on the radio, and it wasn't even anything that was planned. It just happened. And I had never got so much response from people like, thank you for sharing. We connect with you. Like, we've been through that, and that's when I realized, okay, this is maybe my purpose here. Like, when I have something important to say, people will listen. If I can help people by being on the radio, I will.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of when I decided to stay in radio. And I don't remember what your question was exactly, but I felt like then I saw more signs from my brothers after that moment. Like, after I was shared, after I was open it, then I started seeing, like, being able to feel my brothers around and things like that, I guess.
I love the way you said that, because one thing I often try to help people understand is that when our grief is really loud and we have all these emotions, even if we're trying to push them aside or not deal with them, it's not that our loved ones aren't there trying to give us signs or trying to say hello to us. It's that our emotions are not being dealt with. So it's us not being aware of them, not being there for us. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I felt.
I love that, though. And I love that you allowed their story to, it really is this thing that then moves you to the next phase of having more of a vision for what perhaps you could do with the platform that you have. So that's kind of cool. I don't want to miss this little part of, I know part of your story is you never thought that you were going to be kind of an on-air personality. That's not the path you really saw for yourself. Is it where, sort of like for me, where it's like, well, you're just going for different jobs, and then you get kind of swept into this stream of flow and then you're
Yeah.
on air? How does that even happen?
I know, right? It sounds crazy. It is crazy. Well, during college, I always wanted to work in entertainment since I was a very young age. I just didn't, I thought I was more a behind the scenes person, but I didn't know. So during college, I interned at a lot of different places, like at music video production places, at like DreamWorks, at all these casting agents, like things like that. One of the internships was in radio. And I loved it because it was fun. I got to go to concerts. I got to do all these things. And so during college, I got hired on the promo team where you go set up the tents. I made some of my best friends in radio. And then after college, like I said, I had to go get a real job in my head because you don't get paid much as entry level there. And what am I going to do? Right. I never wanted to be on the radio. So went to go work at Fox Sports TV as a sales assistant, which learned that that wasn't for me. Nothing at Fox Sports was great. It's just sales is just not me.
Yeah.
Then my brothers died, and then I went back to radio. And when I had gone back, I was still just in promo, and it was literally just to get out of the house. I still didn't think that was my job. But I was working an event, and there was a big boss there, and his name is John Ivy. He loves when I shout him out. If you look him up, he's like known to find some of the biggest artists like Ryan Seacrest, Justin Bieber, like all these things. At the time, I didn't know who he was. You just know who a boss is. Yeah. And he pulled me aside and he's like, are you new? And by then I had actually technically been working there since I was 18. Like, not really. And he's like, well, where have you been? Why haven't I seen you? Because he came in during that time I wasn't working. And it's like, it's a long story. He's like, well, I have time. So I sat there and told him my whole story, not knowing who he was or anything. I just was very honest. One thing about me is I'm very honest. I'm not a good liar. If you ask me something, I'll tell you the truth. And so he's like, okay. And that was it. And I remember after that, my other boss was like, what did he say? Like, why was he talking to you so much? I'm like, I don't know. He just wanted to know who I was. And so about 2 weeks later, and then I find out who he was. And then 2 weeks later, he pulls me into the office and he says, hey, have you ever thought about like considered being on the radio? And I was like talking? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, no. He's like, well, would you want to? And I was like, sure. Like, like what else was I doing really? Right. And so, he's like, okay. And at the time I wasn't like going to be on the radio. They needed like people that would call in like, hey, I'm out here on the corner of blah, blah, blah. Okay. Come, like that. So I started doing that. They paid me for that. It was great money. I was making no money. It was great money. And then, like I said, I was at the radio station from the morning to night, mainly to keep my mind off what happened with my brothers. And so I started becoming friends with a lot of the on-air talent and the producers. And I started like working on the nighttime show, but not technically. Like back in the day, they didn't really check the hours and stuff. It was just, I would just hang out at the radio station. Yeah. And so I started working on the nighttime show and I started going out with one of my friends, Manny, on the streets. He was like the red carpet reporter in LA. And I would just like learn from him and just go. I'm trying to make this short, but one day so one day with him, there was a Lindsay Lohan, world premiere for music, and there was a James Bond movie premiere. Okay. And they were trying to decide where to send him out to. And then the guy who was on the radio, Jojo, who was the first guy that let me work for him, he said, well, Geena, he asked him, where do you want to go? And Manny said, Lindsay Lohan. It's like, Geena, can you go to James Bond? I'm like, yeah, sure. I was always overconfident since a little kid, like just fake it till you make it, right? Yeah. But I was so scared going to that red carpet by myself. He's like, okay, you go to James Bond. You go there. And I went there by myself on the little carpet with my little mic. I had usually I was just like shadowing Manny, right? Yeah. And so then I'm like doing this, and the first interview I get for him is James Bond himself, Pierce Brosnan. Wow. And so after that, I think it proved to them that I could do it. So when Manny eventually went to work on the Ryan Seacrest show, instead of having auditions, they just slid me in. JoJo's like, I just want Geena. We don't need auditions. She's been doing this. So I became the red carpet reporter. It's still like the street girl though, like not in the studio. But after that, because it's LA, it's a big show. It's a big radio station. A lot of other morning shows started hitting me up to come audition to be the morning girl. Okay. And at the time, I still was not convinced that I wanted to be on the radio. But San Diego was I said no to a lot of people, but San Diego was one of the ones that I was like, I love San Diego. I grew up coming here. All my friends went to college there. Let's just go audition. And I came and auditioned. I remember I didn't even have headphones. I didn't know. I had never sat in a real studio because I was like, in LA, they don't let you go really in the real studio too much. Yeah. And they just said, be you. And so I was like, okay, well, that's easy. And I was probably a little oversharing because you don't realize you're talking to a million people or whatever.
Yeah, it totally doesn't feel like that.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that. And they just said, be you. And so I think within like that week or two, like I got that job like that day. Within a week or two, I was moved down to San Diego, and I've been here for 18 years.
Oh my gosh. So that's
Yeah.
like a whirlwind, kind of one thing leads to another.
Yeah.
At
And but an important part of that story is one
Yeah.
time I asked that initial John Ivy way back, we had lunch. I was like, why did you choose me? Because you could really ask anyone, right? And
Yes.
he said this, and this is good advice. I would say, he's like, look, I can teach anyone to be good on the radio, but I can't teach everybody to work hard, and you were the hardest working person in that room.
That's such
So,
a good point. There's
and
so
that's
much to be said for that.
why he pulled me aside, and he said, that's why he said, and he's like, I can teach anyone to be good, but I can't teach people to work hard. That's not something I could teach them to do.
Wow. And I
Yeah.
think that's valid because that's something anyone can cultivate within themselves,
Yeah.
hardworking and focus and, just taking the opportunities as they come. At what point in that trajectory of kind of, I keep seeing you like a pinball, just kind of bouncing from this thing to the next thing to the next thing and then
Yeah.
down here, where do you become Geena the Latina in
So,
title?
they called me that way back. It was funny because when I started in
Like
radio,
Geena
there
on
were,
the street kind of a thing?
yeah, because they called me that from day one because, so when I was on the street, and at the time there was not many Latinos on the radio at all, at
Yeah.
all. And so I think they wanted people to know that I was. So they started calling me Geena Aguilar, but it just didn't really click on air. So one of the guys there, Dave Stiles, give him a shout out because he always reminds me like, oh, I came up with their name. He just started calling me Geena the Latina, and it just stuck. And they did perceptuals that said that like within like quick, like it was easy to remember. And
Yeah.
so that's when it happened. It happened early on, like the red carpet days.
It's catchy because it rhymes. So
Yeah.
there's that. But were you comfortable with that? I remember the first time when I moved here and I heard you on the radio. It's been a lot of years now. Maybe it was not long after you came here. Actually, it was probably 2011 ish.
Yeah.
And I remember being shocked, like, oh, well, she must be okay with that if that's what they're calling her. But like, I'm pretty sure we're not supposed to identify people by their heritage. So she doesn't have a problem with it. So let's go with it. But
Yeah. I never cared. I thought it was funny, and I never really cared, honestly, ever, until I feel like other people could have a problem with it more than myself. Like, I don't take things that seriously. Like, I am Latina and my name is Geena. I'm not sure what the problem is with that.
I think it's really powerful just for the representation factor.
Yeah.
What's the stat on it? Are you the first female Latina morning show host on a
Non-Spanish,
speaking?
definitely in San Diego,
I
and
love it.
there's not many in the country. I don't know the
Yeah.
exact stat on that. I know like my friend Dana Cortez, she has a show, but there's still in this year there's still not a lot of us. But yes, definitely in San Diego. Yes.
It's so powerful. I was just listening to an interview with Malcolm Gladwell, and his mom is Jamaican, and he was saying how excited she is, that Kamala Harris is running, and that they're like, oh, it's a Jamaican woman. Like, this is the first time anything like this has ever happened. So I imagine it's in some regard the same with, young women who are seeing you thinking like, oh my gosh, maybe this is something I could aspire to, or if she could do it, maybe I could work hard too and do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I think especially as Latina women in the past, I wouldn't say now, like we're known as to be a more traditional role, stay at home, take care of the kids, and I'm completely opposite of that. Like, I don't have kids and I don't want kids. I'm not saying there's anything bad with them. I have a lot of nieces and nephews. I have stepson, you know what I mean? Like, all that's enough for me. I definitely put my career first, and like and I'm not saying either is right or wrong. I'm saying
Yeah, it's just the way
it
you're
gives
doing it.
different representation, and it also gives a representation for whatever path you choose. Hey, there's someone that looks like me on the radio, like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean, or on TV, because I do TV too. It does matter, like, to see
I think
more of
so.
us, and so I don't ever try to be like this super crazy role model, although people like to put me there. That's like too much expectation. But I am who I am. And so if that hopefully inspires you I do believe that anyone could do whatever they want, though, as long as you put your mind to it. I will say that it doesn't matter what race, color, gender you are.
I
And
mean,
for,
you've come a really far away from someone who didn't even know what they thought making it meant to like now you're like creating nonprofits to support other people and you're a role model, girl. I don't know what you're talking about.
yeah, well, my number one thing I said, if I was going to do radio, when I spoke about my brothers being killed, if I was going to continue radio, because remember at that time I was just going to go back
Yeah.
to LA and not do radio anymore. I was going to make my voice matter. And so I have made it my mission to like, because I know like we can have I have a nonprofit. We can show, everybody else can show up and they could do great work. But when Geena Latina shows up and says to say something, the kids start listening just
Yeah.
because like I know that I could say the same thing as someone else, but they'll listen to me because I'm not their mom. I'm not some teacher, and nothing against them. But like sometimes they're like, oh, that girl on the radio who laughs and whatever actually has something important to say. They do listen. And so I have made that, like, if I'm going to stay and deal with the BS of radio, because there's a lot of BS of radio, like, you know what I mean? It's a great job, but there's a lot of BS. Then I'm going to make it, there a reason why I'm doing this. And so that is, you know, as we're talking, I'm speaking at a school tomorrow. I'm the keynote speaker at this school for, it's like for kids who have had a really rough life, you know, or had challenges. And so, I'm speaking at their college expo tomorrow. So I just make sure to make time for all that stuff.
So I was going to say, it's your willingness to go there and share your story. And the way I always say it here is like, shine your light so they can see what you're doing. So perhaps they can see something different for themselves, at least an option for them to consider.
Yeah.
How long is it into that part of your journey where you're down here, you move down, you take the job, things are flowing for you? At what point in that are you like, yeah, I still don't know. I don't know if this is it.
It was that 1 year mark, like when I was on radio for 1 year. And after that, I was like, okay, I'm going to stop quitting. Cause remember, I had tried to quit radio many times. And for some reason I kept coming back, or it was fun or whatever. After that, I decided to not quit anymore. And I was really going to do it. And so like about a year in after this.
And then when did you start the nonprofit? That's much more
Well,
recently, right?
yeah. Well, so when I first, right away, I would start speaking at schools. I got asked to speak at a lot of schools, and I might have overdone it a little bit because it was like, it's emotionally draining to tell you back then, especially because the story was so fresh, you know, it was right after my brothers died. It was a lot. It was really draining, but I did go to a lot of schools at the time, and it kind of became like a lot of schools knew like, hey, Geena will come to, and I try to do as much as I can, but then I took a step back because it was just wasn't good for me emotionally. Cause it's, you know, I'm an empath. So it's just like a lot. And at the time I didn't have the skills to learn how to like clear my space and do all the things. Right. So I took a step back, and then, and then I teamed up with my friend, this other girl who had a nonprofit, and we started the Girls Empowerment Conference. And we did that. It was really cool. With two girls, and we had like 500 teens from all across San Diego would come on a Saturday. We got like different speakers. We had performers. We had all this stuff. And we did every year. It became the biggest conference of its kind in the US that's non-religious. So cool. And we were having all the way up into the pandemic. We had it all planned, and then the pandemic hit, and our conference was like 2 weeks after that. So we had to cancel it. And unfortunately, we did not start it back up after that because there's a lot that goes into it to getting the schools involved, and all the groups had fallen apart. But after that, I had been wanting to do something, and one of my friends he hit me up, my friend Omid, who's the president of our Positive Movement Foundation. He's like, hey, I have this idea. I want to start this nonprofit. Are you in? And he got a group of us together. So, to start this new nonprofit, the Positive Movement Foundation, which we do, you know, lots of different programs. Like, I mean, so many programs. Our intention was to always bring back that empowerment conference at some point. But we're doing a lot of things for the underserved communities and schools here in San Diego.
Well, we're also going to link the positivemovement.org in the show notes with you, along with all of your contact points, just in case anyone wants to get involved or wants to see like, what is this all about? There's a crossover here. So I think we're going to probably wave back and forth between these two topics, but I also want to talk about your show, the Geena the Latina Show, because that to me, with the little bit that I know from hanging out with you a couple times now, that feels like your personal project that you're offering the world of like, you had your journey, you had an awakening of some sort for yourself, and now you're wanting to share what you've learned. Will you talk about that piece?
Yeah. So it's definitely my passion project. So on the radio, I love radio. I love Channel 933, but you know, the format's different. We get to talk about our lives, which all our San Diego listeners have talked about, but we only get short increments of time and all these things. But along my healing journey, after my brothers died, I had some health issues. I really started delving into like the spiritual space, right? And so, I mean, I have done it all. I say like shamans, Reiki, like anything I have tried, right? And I just felt, and for a while it was kind of secret because it kind of seemed like weird, and I'm very mainstream and like,
Yeah. It's a lot
but
of
at,
people's experience here. The way
yeah.
you're describing it is like they start with one thing and then it's like, oh, they're not sharing it. And
Yeah. But at some point I realized like all this work has healed me so much. It's literally changed my life. Like I was
yeah.
probably delved into it for like 7 years, like meditation and all. This is when meditation was even a weird word, right? And
Yes.
like all this stuff, right? And so then I thought, I was like, you know what? I want to be able to, how can I like keep this in? Like it's not fair to everybody else. Like how can I introduce the non, whatever you want to call it. I don't know why I'm saying non-secular, but the non-spiritual world to this,
Yeah.
because I thought it's just, I'm doing a disservice. I'm not helping anyone by keeping all these things in that I've learned. So the idea started, let's start the Geena Latina Show, where it'll just be a kind of like, after you get off work, let's talk about whatever, all these healing stuff. In season one, we
Yeah.
started light, just talking about like journaling and meditating and the basic stuff, right? To me.
Acupuncture. I know there was
Yeah,
that one where
yeah,
you shared your
yeah,
acupuncturist and
yeah,
kind of the more now what I guess has become the more acceptable
yeah.
segments of it, right?
Yeah. But even when we started filming, because I started filming that like 4 years ago, we didn't
Wow.
launch until like 2 years after the first, like for season one, we didn't launch till like 2 years after. So it's been a process, right?
Yeah.
And it's really crazy just over the last few years how all of this has become a little more normalized. But my intention was, you know what? People, quote unquote, don't think I'm like weird. So maybe if they hear me saying it, then they'll listen. Again, the same thing. Like I can
Yeah.
be the bridge to like all this healing stuff that I have experienced. But it's not only healing, it's also like I like to do topics about just learning things, like what is
Yeah.
ayahuasca and what I've never done it, but like what is it? Like just people like are not even, some people don't even have a clue. And if I can be that bridge again to helping people, then I will. So yes, it's a passion project. Everybody that works on the show is doing it for passion. I invest my own money as much as we can. And we're hoping it just, the intention, everyone that works on the show wants to help people. And so they're all doing it. Like everybody has other jobs. So we do it on our own time, but it's turned into a full production. You've seen it. And I
Yes,
feel
I
like,
got to be a guest a few weeks ago, so please
yeah,
check that out. Well, I'll link the
yeah,
YouTube channel and everything below because you really do
yeah,
share. It's not all the same vein. It's different. It's different people's stories, different experiences. Those people that love shows like Top Chef, you had Chef Claudia on not long ago as
yeah,
well, and
yeah,
so it's different people's journeys. But the starting point, like you were saying, for you was your own health and wellness challenges, and then the things that you sought out as like, okay, how am I gonna fix myself? Is that
yeah.
really how it started
Yeah,
for
yeah,
you?
kind of like how am I going to heal myself? But also like, so like Chef Claudia, like I have so many amazing friends that have such like inspirational stories
Yeah.
and like we would have dinners and I'd be like you guys could be helping people. Like I shouldn't be the only one that has access to these people and these conversations and these things I'm learning. So that's what pretty much every different episode is about.
It is really cool that you acknowledge and can I have identified like, oh, I'm a bridge. That's what I do in this work.
Yeah.
I'm a bridge, either connecting. The other thing that I think is probably true we can see is even before you were doing it on the podcast now, I have a feeling everyone that knew you, you're so down to earth and you're so like, girl, I'm from Boston. You're like a
Yeah.
realist about things
Yeah.
and you're going to straight shoot it. You're not going to
Yeah.
say sometimes people can get swept up in the like psychosomatic side of things and they're taking the placebo pill and it does nothing and all, but you're not like that. You're not that girl. You're like,
No.
going to say it,
Yeah,
good or bad.
if you don't want the truth, do not ask me. Don't ask for my
Yeah.
opinion.
So I have a feeling like everyone that knew you was already coming to you privately saying like, hey, what's the deal about acupuncture? What's the deal about Reiki?
Yeah.
What's the deal about?
Yeah.
So you probably were doing some of this
Yeah,
already.
no, I had referred my friends, like so many people, so many things. Oh my God, I
Yeah.
saw this shaman. Oh my God, I saw this. Like, so within my circle, but I just felt like by putting it on YouTube and on the YouTube show, the Geena Latina Show,
Yeah.
it could reach by putting out in the universe, you're letting it reach whoever it's meant to be reached is the way I look at it. Right. So
Yeah.
just opening the circle and whatever's supposed to happen will happen. I believe in that. And we're just going to keep doing it. Until like while it feels right. And if it ever doesn't feel right, then we'll switch gears. And we've made slight adjustments as, the trends and things like that. But overall, the bottom line is always like just to help educate or entertain someone. you know.
Yeah, and you are such a great doorway in for a lot of people because we have a lot of listeners who are kind of all over the world and different parts of the US and Canada. And but those of us that are local here, you really have this reputation as a trustworthy, almost like a big sister vibe is
Yeah.
I think the feeling, especially for a lot of young girls that you serve. So I think people can look to you and say like, oh, well, what's her opinion about it? And maybe it's not going to fully decide that topic for them, but you share it in such an easily digestible way, I think, too,
Yeah.
that it's
Yeah.
excellent.
I always say like, find what works for you. I'm just exposing if it doesn't feel good for like, I'm never trying to convince someone on any episode. I'm just trying to like,
Yeah.
hey, let you know this is what I did, or this is whatever, take it or leave it. And not everything is going to be for everybody. But if
Yeah.
it doesn't resonate with you, then don't do it. If it does, like I'm big on intuition. And if it doesn't feel right, well, then it's not for you. But if it does, like, do that. We need to do
Yeah.
a whole episode on intuition, by the way.
I know it's such a huge topic, and I think it's so misunderstood. It's like I feel like it's a thing I end up talking about all the time.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up too, though, because I remember you saying when you were a girl, you really always knew that there was something more for you. You had like an inner intuition or an inner knowing of like, no, I am capable. I don't know how I'm going
Yeah.
to get there or figure it out, but I'm going to work real hard and I'm capable.
Yeah.
Did that intuition stay with you to some degree the whole time?
Well, okay, let's to answer your question a little differently. So
Okay.
the intuition, like, so since I was young, I just knew things. I don't know I didn't know what it was. I just knew things.
Like what kind of
I,
things?
like, for example, one of my softball teammates passed away, and the night before I started getting really anxious and I knew something bad was going to happen, right? Like I just knew it over,
Yeah.
and then that happened, right? To as silly as in high school, my teacher would write like numbers on, and me and my friend would play a game, and I would tell her what number was going to be written before it'd be written, and I would always get it right. Like I just kind of
Yeah.
knew. And then as I was growing up, I've had multiple, whatever you want to call them. At the time, I thought they were psychics at the time, come up to me randomly. Like I remember, and just come up to me and stop me and be like, you have this presence about you. Like you're going to do big things. And I'd be like, I know.
I
And
know. I
then,
love that answer.
yeah, yeah. And then like multiple would just come up to me and always say like, I feel your presence, which was, the time it just kind of became normal because it happened all the time, but I didn't really understand it.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, I just always knew things. I don't know. I just know if something's right. I know if something's wrong. I know if someone's good. I know if someone's bad. I know to stay away from things. Like I used my intuition at a very young age, how to stay out of trouble, like to stay away from things. And that really served me in
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
It sounds like you had some little bit of permission to just allow yourself to trust that. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong is I think it's why people will say like, oh yeah, I knew it. I knew that person was not good, or I knew that I shouldn't have gone to that situation.
Yeah.
They question it or don't trust it. It sounds like you have always had a lot of permission to go with your gut.
Yeah. I think, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I didn't verbalize it. I mean, my parents definitely didn't, like, they weren't the kind of parents to tell me like, no, like I was always the one that I just did what I want because I
Yeah.
knew. Like,
Just figure it out.
I make decisions all the time based on gut with nothing, no quote unquote facts behind me, and I don't really
Wow.
care. Yeah.
I like it. I think if we could all get a little closer to that, that'd be maybe
Yeah.
better. It sounds like too you have a very strong sense of yourself, and
Yeah.
you have this really beautiful way of being neutral about a judgment on an idea and just assessing whether you feel personally like it's right for you or not. It's not about
Yeah.
is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's is it for me or not for me?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because it could be like as simple as is it in my highest and best to go to this party today, my friend's birthday party, right? I could force myself to go because I feel bad, or I know in my body that I really shouldn't go because my body needs rest, and I'm okay, and being okay with that. You know what I mean? Like it's just a thing. You just start putting yourself first, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that come naturally to you, that ability to put yourself first?
No, that had to be taught by my healers and stuff, because I
Okay.
would still like push myself or like put others first, and then I would get sick, and then I knew I shouldn't have gone, and those are very
Okay.
basic things. But you do that enough, and then you follow your intuition enough to realize like, oh, that's why,
Yeah.
and so enough that you don't need a reason anymore. And we don't always get validation.
That's so true.
But I've had validation enough to know that it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds
Yeah.
like I mean, I know you've received lots of different types of healing and had lots of different experiences. And if you're not okay with me sharing this, we can cut it out. But I know
No,
you actually have like trained a little bit in modalities of healing yourself to learn how to do it,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. So when I was first going through my healing journey, I started doing theta healing, like
Mm-hmm.
going to a theta healer.
Yeah.
And all I know is that I don't know what the heck she did, but 1 hour with her for me did better than 5 years of traditional therapy. I'm not saying any traditional therapy is bad, but for me,
Right.
that was my thing. So I know if something's good, I'm going to keep going. So I went to her every like 2 weeks for like a year or two. And eventually I'm a natural learner. Like I'm an investigator by like my craft. I'll
Yeah.
report everything. I'll look up everything. So I was like, what is this that she's doing? So she told me about like a beginning like workshop. So I just went like just to learn really. And then I like found love with it. So I went to the second like theta healing 2 into the advanced 2. I became actually a theta healer practitioner. I actually am certified and can. I just have I'm too busy, but I
You have a
do it
lot
on
of
my,
things going on.
yeah, yeah. I do it on my friends and I think it's so healing. So then, I started to tap into that. And then I also started to tap into like, so after my brothers died, I always knew I could communicate with them. Like, and I don't care what people say, like they play songs, they talk to me. Like it is
Mhm.
so easy for me to communicate with my brothers, but I never communicate with anyone else, just my brothers. And so as I started learning, I was like, what is this? So I took some courses with like, Monica the Medium, James Van Prague, just to like hone into my skills
Yeah.
more, and it was like, it's been really cool. I'm nowhere near you or whatever, but it is cool to like understand different signs and different messages from my loved ones, but also from other people's loved ones too.
Yeah.
To an extent, I'm still trying to figure it out, but it's just good. Another thing to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's for me it's such a wonderful example of like just being able to give yourself permission to just try something that interests you
Yeah.
and not like hold a judgment about like, oh, what if I don't do good? What if I, like that fear, whatever it is that stops us from just trying something. It's one of my favorite things about you. You have a lot of there's just something that overrides that in you that's like, no,
Yeah.
we're gonna go, we're gonna do it, we're
Yeah.
gonna
Let's
just
do
try it
this.
and see. It's like I don't even
Yeah.
know what it is, but it's just like a really special quality about you.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't have that quality naturally, do you have any advice that you would tell someone who's like, oh, I want to try things but I don't know what to try, or I get scared? What would you say to someone who feels like that?
Like in general or
Yeah.
just okay. I say just keep trying things until you know like this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like dating, right? When you first date, you start dating like random people, like try different
Yeah.
things. I used to go to like if someone invited me to a drum circle, I'd go. If someone did this, I would just go, and then I probably never went again if I didn't like it, or
Yeah.
whatever. But like just have an open mind and go, and you'll find something that you're like, oh, this is what I love it, and then keep going and keep going, and then it's okay if like it kind of wanes out and you find something else, but like just keep trying. Like what does it hurt? Like what do you, I feel like people talk themselves out of things before things even happen, which to me is like mind blowing. Like how'd you go down this full rabbit hole before like you even tried? Like, you know what I mean? Like I don't understand that concept. Like
Yeah.
try first and then figure it out. Like, and
Yeah.
I always say like most things in the world is not brain surgery. Like I would never go try to be a brain surgeon because I feel like you have to have really special skills, but most things are not. Most things
Right.
we can figure out if you just put in your effort and want to figure it out. Like when I
Yeah.
came in the radio, I didn't know how to do anything. Now I know how to edit, do all these things, that I taught myself. I just figured it out. Just figure it out.
Yeah.
Everyone's
Yeah.
smart. Like you're not innately like quote unquote dumb. Like I think we're told we are, or we think
Right.
because we didn't get good grades in school or whatever the case is, but that's just what everyone's telling you. Like you can really figure out whatever you want. Minus maybe, I wouldn't go try to do brain surgery. I always say that, but most things.
Yeah. Well, at least you
But
could
you
go to a
could,
class and learn about it if you just were
yeah,
interested.
but
Like,
you could, if you really wanted to, you really could become a doctor. You know what I mean?
yeah,
If you really, really
absolutely.
wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
not
it's
that's not my lane though.
I wonder if you believe like I do that if someone's curiosity is being piqued about a certain area or topic, like I feel like, well, that's probably for you then. Like
Yeah.
if it's calling to you, because there's a whole lot of people. I was one of these people for a long time that like mediumship was of no interest whatsoever. Like I was
Yeah.
like that for a long time. And then something shifted, and kind of like yours, it was breadcrumbs of different things I tried and different things I had to experience first. And then I realized there's this whole world of mediumship that exists, and thousands of practitioners and different types of like things
I
I didn't know,
know.
different types of mediumship. And it's this whole world that opens up for you. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like, just if something's calling you or piquing your interest, or you find yourself just like consistently interested, like just explore a little more, just have an
Like,
experience.
and I think, yeah, and I think nothing happens by chance. And if something keeps reoccurring in your life, even if it's a conversation someone's having and you're piqued your interest, like we got to start listening to it, you know?
Yeah.
And every journey starts with like a little something. Like before we got on the call, you were talking about my website, and you're now the second person that told me there's problems with my website. So to me, I need to, not problems, but I need to go fix my website. The universe has given me 2 signs today within the hour to go fix my website. And now if I don't listen, then that's up to me, right? Like, but the
Yeah.
universe always is giving you signs of different things. I could have just blown that off like, oh yeah, like, it's not like you were telling me to fix your website, but
Yeah.
you and my boss both told me there's something going on, and that's like, whatever, but like, I wanted to share my mediumship experience with you
Yeah.
because, so I never believed that, like, I thought mediums were like BS and like, I was like the biggest, but we always had them coming into our radio station, right? And until this one girl came in, her name was, Medium Michelle, and I don't think she practices anymore. But she came in and she told, like, she was one of the mediums that they feel pain. And she told me exactly where my brother was shot. Like, she knew things that just no one would know.
Yeah.
And then I started to believe it every time she came. And then Monica, the medium, came in and she was just like, I was blown away. And then I was like, oh shit. Okay. These people, this is real. Right. And it
Yeah.
was so healing for me to hear messages from my brothers. Like, how the heck would these 2 girls know? And some people say, oh, well, you're a public figure. No, they knew exact details
Yeah.
from things that there's no way anyone could know. And so after that, those were like 2 experiences. And then I started opening my mind to medium to the point where now I can do it myself, kind of. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
I would have never, and like 15 years ago, I was like, oh, this is BS. But I listened to the medium one and then another medium. Like, there was enough experiences in my life to be like, okay. And it's led me down this path. So I guess my
Yeah.
point in that is that, like, we just need to listen to the universe, keep trying. Oh, keep trying. And I don't push things ever, but like,
Right.
hey, my friend randomly invited me to a James Van Prague thing. Okay, I'll go do it. Who cares? Like, let's sign up,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just, I guess there's a willingness to have an experience that's in there
Yeah.
that we can cultivate in ourselves. And I think often for a lot of people, maybe not everybody, but there's definitely, we talk about it when we're training in mediumship. There's just a percentage of people that will be at like a public demonstration, or I started training before I had ever been to like a big group mediumship reading. I didn't even know what that was, if it was a thing. I was several months into my training before I saw that even, and how many people get brought by someone else, or,
Mm-hmm.
someone invites them, or it's like this is your job, you're at the radio station and this person comes in and it's like in your day that day, whether you like it or not. So it's fascinating the way these things can kind of come across
Right.
our paths, and
Yeah.
you could have resisted, you could have said no, but it's just that little bit of openness. And
Yeah.
what I love about that is it's something anyone can work on within themselves. Is just, can you be a little bit more open to experiences? Can you be a little bit more open to notice, oh, you know what, 2 people in 24 hours said the same thing to me. Maybe I had to pay attention here. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Just
Yeah.
those things. I think people think it's going to be this like big, I did anyways, this big like it is in the movies, time stands still and we realize, oh, I'm having a moment right now. It's not like that.
Yeah.
It's these little breadcrumbs is how I always feel like it is.
Yeah. So we have to pay attention to them, right?
Yeah.
And have faith and like just trust. Like I think once I was able to just 1,000% trust the universe, for me, God, whatever it is you believe in,
Yeah.
like, and know that, like, not to worry about stuff and just like trust that, like, if you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing, you're opening, ready for the universe and signs, like, you will be guided the right way. So many people get stuck on like, okay, I want to get here and this is how I'm going to get it. But they
Yeah.
don't realize like it could go all these other ways.
Yeah.
And so just don't, like, you have to follow the ebbs and flows and where life takes you. And it's always going to take you somewhere better as
Well,
long
and
as
it's
you're
that
open to it.
determination too, right? Of
Yes.
like not give, even if things are not unfolding the way maybe we thought that path was going to look, just moving forward, keeping at it, keeping
Yeah.
available, I guess.
Yeah. And being open to all the opportunities and going with them and saying yes, really, to things that feel right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
to trustworthy resources. So anyone who's
Yes.
looking for an additional trustworthy resource, the Geena the Latina Show, you can find it on YouTube and everywhere you
Yes.
listen to
Yes.
podcasts.
It's funny because when I talk about the guests, I think I told you about this. When I choose the guests, people are like so surprised. Like I literally sit down and feel like how do you choose a guest? Well, I tune into their energy or
Yeah.
kind of or try. Like, is this a good
I
guest
love
for the
that you're saying
show?
this right now.
Yeah, like, is this going to be a good person for the show? Is their energy feel right? Sometimes I need a conversation on the phone with them and if it does, then yes, we're going with it. Like, I don't care how many
Yeah.
followers they have or don't have, like, whatever. Or if it doesn't feel right for right now, nothing's saying wrong in them. I've said no. Like, I've said no to some big people because I just didn't feel they were right for our show.
Yeah.
And so, but I really like just, and I do that with the topics too. Like how do you come up with the topics? I just sit, I usually, go into yoga and I always come out of hot yoga. Ask my boyfriend, I'll run to the car cause I have all these ideas of like, okay, this is what we gotta do. This is who I gotta call this. I go in there with intention. I go into hot yoga and I come back out with everything I need to know. And that's how the universe works, really. If you don't have to go to hot yoga, but for me, that's what it works.
Well, the good thing that I want to point out about that is since you are someone that's so on the go, it's giving your mind that time, whether it's meditation or yoga or going for a walk around your block or giving your mind that time to just not have to be thinking so hard and processing and looking for it so that inspiration or intuition can drop in.
Yeah. Because are you into brainwaves and all that? Obviously,
Yeah,
probably, right?
all the
Okay.
things.
Yeah, and that's it's just like we're operating in beta brainwave all day long.
Yeah.
Most people are, and that you're not getting answers from there. So when you are able to do all these other things, you're drop into the alpha brainwave at least, and then if you can get into the theta brainwave, that's where everything is just like magic. Like you have your best ideas, you have your best like everything. I always tell people like if you can learn how to like not mess with your brainwaves, but drop into different brainwaves at any part of the day, like your life.
Have access.
Yes. And you can. I mean, I always say through meditation is a great way to start, but there's so many ways to do it.
That's so true. Oh, well, I love all the work that you're doing. I'm going to shift gears a little bit because I don't want to keep you too long. At the end of our guest episodes, we do something called the Spirit Speed Round, which you have graciously agreed to participate in, even though you have no real idea what it is.
No, I'm down. I'm down for whatever.
It's not hard and there's no pressure.
Okay.
Will you share one thing that really shocked you or was unexpected about these spiritual gifts that you started learning about?
Wait, I'm sorry, you cut out for a second.
Will you share one thing that either shocked you or was really unexpected as part of your spiritual journey, like looking through all these different healing modalities and energy work and intuition and all that? Is there something that was like shocking or unexpected for you as a part of that?
When I realized that I could talk to dead people, that was shocking as fuck. I was like, what the hell?
Who are you telling?
And but on top of that, when you know that it brings someone so much healing, it's so rewarding. And those moments are just, it's like crazy. Like I was just like blown away. Now it's kind of normal. It's not like a big woo, but I remember the first time I was like, oh dang, like how did that come through? Like what the heck? But apparently that's what the person needed to hear. So, okay.
Yeah, you're right. That is a really hard to describe and like unexpected feeling.
Yeah.
If you got to spend a day on the other side in the spirit world, you got the full tour, you got to spend time with everyone who you've ever known that's crossed over, and it's almost time for you to return to your life. Your guide tells you you have 1 hour left and you can spend it with anyone who's on the other side. Who do you choose and why?
You're going to make me cry. It would have to be both my brothers, Stephen and Matthew. Yeah.
I'm sure you miss them.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's crazy because they died 20 years ago or something, and like that, I think that's something with grief that like, you don't like, it's just something you always deal with,
For sure. And I think it's something that people beat themselves up for, not realizing like, no, grief is ever present. And
and it goes in waves. It goes up and down. Sometimes I could talk about them like without crying and obviously whatever today, but definitely them.
Well, I got to meet one of them and it was an honor. He was a real charmer.
So. Yeah, he talks a lot all the time.
I'm sure he talks to you all the time too.
He does. Sometimes I have to tell him to chill out.
Hey, this is their like fame too. They got ideas.
Oh yeah.
They
Oh,
got
they
things to
do.
say.
Yes.
I'm sure your other brother's trying to pick out your fashion all the time too.
Yeah, I know. He's not happy with me right now, probably. I've put it to the back burner
You're so
lately.
funny. Uh, Even though we have all these spiritual gifts and awarenesses, we have very human lives. What's
Uh,
one quirky thing about you that people might be surprised to learn?
oh man, like what? Like give me an example.
I don't know. Like some people have said that they're like, even though they have a really public life, they're actually like a really shy book nerd
Uh,
or something they do in the morning or just a quirky habit or a quirky
uh I
personality thing
I
about you.
I have probably a lot. I I'm not as wild as people think I would be. Like I'm actually
Okay.
pretty calm. I'm not like I would never like I'm not like the bad one at the parties. Like we have a good time, but I'm actually calmer. Like people think I don't like people as much as we're like look like we're drinking and partying. I actually don't drink that much. Like I'm fake drinking. I also am like oh, I know this is my favorite thing.
Okay.
And I've been delving into this more. Like if I didn't do the radio, I would love to be an interior decorator.
Ooh.
So I love decorating stuff. So all my friends know, like my friend just bought a house. Like I totally did her house.
Wow.
I worked with her to like I'm very particular on certain things though. But I love it. Like I love like my house to have, you walked into it, you know, like
Yeah.
different things and to do the styles. And so I help my friends with that stuff too.
Oh,
So
see, that is a cool, quirky thing. And
yeah.
you have a very cool taste in art. I have
Oh,
seen
thank
your
you.
work. It's lovely.
Yeah. Thank you.
I
Thank you.
meant to
Thank
tell
you.
you that those two pieces that you have near the front, I like those a lot.
Yeah, you know
In
what's
case you know
crazy
which
is
ones.
I didn't even realize, and we didn't do this on purpose. Every person, we have a lot of art in our house. Every person is dead. That wasn't on purpose.
Oh
But
wow.
like, I think that's like something means something because I do connect with like dead people all the time.
Yeah,
Like, I don't
interesting.
know. I just felt like, oh wow, why did I choose those ones? But okay.
Oh yeah, no, I liked them all. They're really cool.
Yeah.
Will you leave us with a pearl of wisdom? What's one piece of advice that you wish that you'd had earlier on in your understanding in your like the journey of your life?
Like
What's one piece?
just overall,
Yeah, overall, just as a person.
um, stop caring what people think. And I'm
Yeah.
still working about this because I feel like we care too much about what the world thinks that we lose who we are and our authentic self and who we're supposed to be, especially with social media now. But even, you know, I always cared what people thought since I was at a young age about maybe the way I looked, or even like I started the Geena Latina Show way longer before because I was scared, or I wouldn't even talk about how I could talk to dead people, or like, you know, like I just cared too much, and I'm still a work
Yeah.
in progress. But if I could tell any kid, like, who gives a F about what other people think, just if
Yeah.
it feels right to you, do it.
I think that's perfect. And I think as adults, we still need to hear that one. I know that
I
sometimes
know.
I still need to hear it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm
thank
speaking
you.
to myself right now.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all the nonprofit work you're doing and all the work that you're doing with the Geena the Latina Show. Everyone, check that out. We're going to link everything in the show notes too, so you can easily access it. And thank you for being here, shining your light.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Well, what did you think? I know that most of you that listen are empaths or sensitives of some kind. And I'm sure just by watching or listening to Geena, you can feel her energy. You can feel the powerhouse of a soul that she is. And I love that she has really given herself to the community as this bridge to either bring information, bring inspiration, bring support, bring awareness, and to connect people and help them open up just a little bit more. She truly is a beautiful human being. Make sure you check out her show, the Geena the Latina Show, on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, that's linked in the show notes. And her charity organization, the nonprofit, thepositivemovement.org. We will link that as well if you want to find out how to be involved in that, and certainly to have the Geena the Latina Show as a wonderful resource for things that are adjacent to all the things that we talk about here. I'm so grateful to Geena for being here with us today, for sharing her story, for sharing her wisdom and her advice in that no nonsense, down to earth way that she has. I'm grateful for her being here, shining our light. Thank you to Geena, and thank you to all of you for being here. I would love it if you found value in this episode. If you would, wherever you're listening, do a little like or a subscribe, and make sure to share an episode with a friend so that they can have their mind open just a little bit wider as well. Big hugs, lots of love. Bye for now from inside Spirit Speakeasy.